Hey everybody, JTVectorSigma here, and I watched the Bumblebee movie a little while ago, and now that it's finally out on Blu-ray and digital release, it's okay for me to release that reaction, in my opinion. And so, this is a video serving as a redirect for the movie, but also as a sort of little review for those of you who want to know my thoughts and opinions on it after the fact, or before the fact, whatever. Either way, order doesn't really matter. Simply put, it's a good movie, you know? Spoiler-free as possible. Charlie, the girl, is a very likable protagonist. Bumblebee himself is adorable. Some odd choices were made in the service of this originally being a prequel to the previous films, but retooled through editing and CGI and all that sort of stuff, it has become more of a standalone movie, which does make those odd choices stand out quite a bit. Even so, they're mostly negligible. It really doesn't matter all that much. It's a standalone story that wraps itself up pretty nicely, but gives a bunch of setup for future stories at the same time, and it's just really well done. Quite clearly, this was a love letter to all the fans and previous iterations of the show, or franchise rather. Not just in terms of the design, but also just in terms of the story aesthetics. The previous Michael Bay films clearly prioritized things like action and, I want to say comedy, but the moments weren't really all that funny. But yes, very clearly the previous films had stuff in mind that was meant to appeal to a large, wide audience and didn't have a whole lot of substance behind it. This movie, it's not groundbreaking in any kind of way, but it has much more of a heart and whatnot to it than previous films did. I know, obviously, that other people have said this already because the movie's been out for a while, but I still think it's worth noting that it is. It's just a much better, much more of a feel-good kind of movie rather than a big action blockbuster. Really, I think that's very important because it gets close to what the heart of Transformers really is. It's not about the robots fighting each other, even though that is really cool. It's about the fact that these aliens, these machines, are more human oftentimes than, well, the human characters themselves. Which is something that this movie kind of struggles to get to, in the sense that it still has to focus in on the human protagonists. But, as I said, Charlie is much more likable than any previous human protagonist in a Transformers movie, and therefore her dynamic with Bumblebee in the movie is much more enjoyable than, say, Cade Yeager and Optimus Prime, even though Bumblebee can't talk. I think that's about all I'm going to say for spoiler-free stuff. If you haven't watched the movie, just go ahead and watch it, and maybe watch my reaction as well, and then you can come back and hear the spoilery stuff. Because, you know, I do want to talk about it a little bit, so just giving you that forewarning. More spoilery type stuff. Obviously, the entire opening sequence, it's beautiful. It is the robot action that we want to see, but because we can recognize the characters now, if you're a fan of previous iterations of the franchise, you can recognize the characters and you can attach feelings to them, even though the movie hasn't really done anything to earn that. And therefore, it's just so exciting. And quite honestly, even if you haven't really watched, say, G1 or Transformers Prime or really any other iteration of the franchise, but you probably have, like, absorbed the character designs through pop culture osmosis, and, like, I imagine that most people going into it know, okay, that's what Optimus Prime is supposed to look like, that's what Soundwave is supposed to look like, that's what Shockwave is supposed to look like. And so they can look at those and they can be like, oh, that's a callback to that old stuff. That's pretty cool. And that works in the movie's favor. It can get you at least a little bit invested really quickly. And yeah, seeing the Autobots, seeing Bumblebee have to just abandon his home like that at the very beginning, it does set up a very sort of melancholy to him and to the movie that honestly does follow it for quite a bit. And then we get to Earth, we meet Charlie, and Charlie's family is probably my least favorite aspect of this movie. They're kind of annoying. They don't serve too much of a purpose. Memo, the friend there, like he's kind of in the same boat. He doesn't really do anything of any importance, but he's fun. I think he grounds the movie a little bit by just giving us this character to latch onto who's kind of outside of all the craziness, doesn't have much of an investment in any of it other than not dying. So he's fine. The rest of the family can kind of just buzz off a little bit. John Cena was... He's one of the parts of the movie that has the odd choices behind it and really, really stands out. There's very clearly one version of the movie where he was supposed to be this stone-cold badass, completely serious type character, like a prototype of William Lennox. But then there's another version of the movie that I think it is more in the rewrites and stuff, where he is a G.I. Joe type, hammy, fun character. And that's the version of him that I really like, and I think that's the version of him that they really wanted to bring out, but they couldn't reshoot every scene, so they did have some of those left over from before. Most of the time, though, I did like his character. He was a lot of fun. Just his intro there where he just... it's a malfunctioning, the stupid paintball gun thing. It was really fun. As for the Decepticons, the ones that we actually get to know, they're more or less one note, but they do have more personality than previous Decepticons in the franchise do. At least the ones that stuck around. The Decepticons that stuck around longest in the previous movies tended not to have any real personality whatsoever. They were just murder machines. Shatter and Dropkick, they're alright. They're nowhere near the levels of any of the cartoons are in terms of making these into actual characters, but they do more to redeem the Decepticons than any of the previous movies. I do think that they are also more or less artifacts from the first version of this movie because they do have a more Bayformer type design to them than the Bumblebee or Optimus or the rest of those do. Shadow and Dropkick look just a lot more complex in their design, and just they're not based on any G1 characters that I'm aware of, so they're definitely more in the Bayformers category. And that is a strike against them, and it does mean, of course, they have absolutely crappy toys. But just in terms of how they're portrayed, they're fun. I wouldn't have minded, honestly, if they'd stuck around, like, after the end of the movie. If they hadn't died, that actually probably would have been great. Because, I mean, like I said, they don't have much personality, but they have enough that I didn't mind when they were on screen. They were fun to watch. This movie is very simple, but that works in its favor. And I don't want to go on to this too much. I don't want to like nitpick it to death, and I don't want to just like, here's every single aspect of this going on for almost as long as the movie, like I have previous times. There's not really anything that I would change about this movie in terms of like, oh, well, here's clearly a point where a bad thing was done that if they just changed it up like one little bit, that would have made it so much of a better movie. Like, I can't think of anything like that. Anything that would be changed about this movie would be something related to like consistency of tone sort of thing, which can't really be fixed without major reshoots and editing stuff, which they already did, most likely to change up the tone. So in order to fix that, so to speak, they'd basically just have to restart the movie from scratch, but no, like I can't think of any specific changes that I would make to this. Everything works very well, and it's just a decent, solid movie that doesn't do too much to make itself stand out, but considering how much better than the previous movies it is, this sets a new standard moving forward that I think all the fans will probably be holding these movies to. So, if you enjoy the Bumblebee movie, my reaction, this off-the-cuff sort of review, whatever, do your thing, and come back for more in the future, because I plan on doing more. See you then.